Hi, my name's Iman, and today I'll be talking about the bubonic plague. Okay, so a bit of an overview for the plague. The causative agent of the plague is a bacteria called Yersinia pestis. Some other common names are the Black Death, the pestilence, great mortality, and the blue sickness. However, I believe the Black Death and the pestilence are the most common names used for it. Three types of plague. There are three types of plague, and that includes the bubonic plague, which is the most common type of plague, the septicemic plague, and the pneumonic plague. And this picture here shows what Yersinia pestis is supposed to look like. So some background information on septicemic and pneumonic plague. Septicemic plague is basically when the plague bacteria enters your bloodstream, it enters directly into your bloodstream, and it multiplies within the circulatory system. This gives it easier access to all your internal organs since it's directly into the bloodstream. And septicemic plague can actually develop from pneumonic or bubonic plague, but it can also develop on its own within the body. And this picture on the bottom just shows a symptom of septicemic plague. Then we have pneumonic plague, and this is when the plague bacteria enters your lungs and it multiplies within the lungs. So it multiplies within the lungs, and so that means it's directly involved with the respiratory system, and this is actually the most fatal type of plague. And the picture on the bottom just shows a progression in accumulation of the plague bacteria within a person's lungs. And I really like this picture in the middle because it shows how the different types of plagues affect different systems within the body. So the bubonic plague affects the lymphatic system, septicemic plague affects the circulatory system, and the pneumonic plague mainly affects your lungs. Some characteristics of the bubonic plague. So it has an incubation period of 2 to 8 days, and a hallmark for this disease are swollen lymph nodes, also called buboes, and these are generally buboes. And these are generally found in your armpits and groin area. And this top picture over here just shows a comparison between a normal lymph node and a swollen bubo. Some common symptoms are extreme weakness, fever and chills, coughing up blood, as well as bleeding within the skin, and a process called gangrene, which is basically the death of tissues, and this mainly occurs in the body's extremities, so your arms, legs, fingers, and toes, and it can spread to your internal organs as well. It's characterized by decaying skin, as you can see in this picture where the skin on your fingers, the skin on the fingers, it's decaying. And then the bottom right picture just shows where certain symptoms affect the body. So back to the causative agent of Yersinia pestis. It was discovered by a man named Alexander Yersin in 1885. This is him. Oh, no. This is him right here. And so this bacteria is rod-shaped, as you've seen in the pictures before and in this picture over here. It's also gram-negative, and it's usually described as non-motile. However, there are some sources that describe it as motile when it's isolated from the host. It belongs to the family Enterobacteriaceae, and it's able to rapidly multiply, which I believe that is probably the main reason why it's so deadly, because it reproduces so quickly and spreads so fast. It's really difficult to catch it in its earlier stages and prevent it right from the beginning. So a bit of a historical overview. There were 3 major bubonic plague pandemics: the Justinian plague, the Black Death, and the occurrence in Yunnan province, China. So the Justinian plague, this was the first bubonic plague pandemic, and it's believed that the original strain of Yersinia pestis came from China and northeast India, so Eastern Asia, and it's believed that it spread all the way to northern Africa mainly, making Egypt the origin of the pandemic, the Justinian plague pandemic. And this occurred mainly in the Byzantine Empire, and was just spread around through trading routes mainly. So this map over here just shows everything the Byzantine Empire included, much of southern Europe and northern Africa. You see Egypt in the corner, and then the map on the bottom shows how or where the plague spread, so the dark brown areas. You can see how it's along the Nile River, since the first cases of the Justinian plague were discovered to be on the northern and eastern shores of the Nile River. And then and you can see how the trading routes affected the spread of the bubonic plague. So the Black Death was occurred in Europe mainly, and it was the source of over 25 million deaths in Europe. That's 1/3 of Europe's population, or what Europe's population was back then. And there were many factors that contributed to the spread of the Black Death. This included trading, mainly with the Silk Road and ships. So this bottom map shows how the Silk Road affected it, or how the Silk Road spread from Asia all the way to Europe and Southern Asia as well. And then trading with ships, so overseas trading, which was also a huge factor in the Justinian plague. This happened because there were infected rodents, specifically rats, on the ships, and they infected the sailors who docked at popular ports such as Sicily and southern Italy, and those sailors ended up infecting the people within those cities, and it just spread further because of that. And then, so the third main factor is the siege of Kaffa, which is known to be the first instance of biological warfare. It's when the Mongolian army laid siege to a Crimean city called Kaffa, and they catapulted plague-ridden cadavers into the city, over the city's walls. And so these cadavers ended up infecting everyone within the city, and a lot of inhabitants died because of that, but some survivors ended up fleeing. However, those survivors were infected. And so when they fled to other places, they just spread the disease further. So the third major instance of the bubonic plague occurred in Yunnan province, China in 1855. This was when Alexander Yersin identified Yersinia pestis. However, he identifies it in 1885, and this pandemic began in 1855, so it does take a while. And it spread all the way to Hong Kong, and was mostly concentrated in very urban areas in China. So transmission of the bubonic plague, it is a zoonotic pathogen, which means it's transmitted from animals to humans through zoonosis. And it is primarily done through flea bites, through the oriental rat flea. So this flea attaches itself to a rodent, specifically a rat, and it feeds off of the rat, and the rat that it feeds off of has the plague, so it's an infected rat, and that infects the flea. And the rats with the plague, they start dying because they're infected, and that makes the rat population decline, which means the fleas need a new source of food, of blood. And so they turn towards humans mainly, and then they infect the humans with the infected blood from the rat. And so some mechanisms of flea bites, they basically create a direct entry hole into your body, into your bloodstream, and they inject you with not only their saliva, but they inject you with flea dirt and sometimes regurgitated blood that they have not digested yet. So that includes infected blood from the infected rat. And fun fact, fleas actually poo every time they feed on a host, which is where the flea dirt comes from, so they're injecting you with that as well. So pathogenesis of the bubonic plague, it requires a host. It can live for a few weeks in certain conditions such as moist soil, corpses, fecal matter, and it can even live for up to an hour in air, just suspended. It is really good at evading the immune system, specifically the innate immune system, by using these proteins, these cytotoxic YOPs. These proteins actually attach to phagocytic cells, and they initiate apoptosis or inactivate macrophages. So they directly attack these cells and completely evade the process of phagocytosis. A little bit more about the immune response. So they're really good at evading the immune system, and they do this by using a type 3 secretion system to deliver the YOPs to phagocytic cells. And then those phagocytic cells are inactivated, they can't function properly. And so the host really relies on the adaptive immune system, which initiates clonal expansion, basically the proliferation of T and B cells. And this tries to increase the host's immunological memory to this bacteria, but since Yersinia pestis is so rapid at multiplying and the adaptive immune system can't keep up, the pathogen eventually will take over if this is like the first time the host has seen it, the first exposure to this bacteria, and if it's not treated quickly. So it's very, very good at almost completely evading the immune system. And it also has proteins that inhibit the release of cytokines within the host, so that reduces the efficiency of the adaptive immune system as well. So some recent outbreaks. It does occur in today's world, however, not on a pandemic scale. According to the World Health Organization, the Democratic Republic of Congo has reported around 56 cases in the year of 2022, so that's this year. And that includes 2 deaths because of the bubonic plague. And just a little bit more history background for the US. The last urban plague epidemic within the United States occurred in Los Angeles, California, and it lasted only a year, but and the number of average cases per year in the US is estimated to be around 7 cases per year. The most endemic countries today are Democratic Republic of Congo, Madagascar, and Peru. Some preventative measures, definitely wear gloves, especially when handling corpses of potential carriers, just any corpse, rodents, handling rodents, rats, any potential carriers for this disease. Flea repellent. Flea repellent is a good measure to take to get rid of the primary vectors of this disease. Use it on yourself and your pets to increase safety measures. And another big one is not to avoid consuming raw or undercooked meat. A lot of cases in today's world, or like recent cases, were caused by the consumption of raw food, of raw meat. Also, try to reduce potential habitats for rodents, like in your backyard or front yard, any places where a potential carrier might want to live or adopt. Try to reduce those. So some treatments, there is now an attenuated vaccine for this disease, but the plague can also be treated with antibiotics since it is a bacteria. And to increase the efficiency of antibiotics, however, it should be treated within 24 to 48 hours of discovering that you have the plague. And just another kind of preventative measure for spreading this, creating it on a pandemic, or letting it spread to a pandemic scale, is to just isolate anyone immediately who has the plague or might have the plague. Yeah, and those are my sources. Thank you.